You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host, Keith Angle, on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good evening, everybody. Keith Angle for TGI Sports Talk. How are you tonight? Not my usual time. You usually see me bright and early in the morning, like you saw me this morning with Mac from Mac and Jack Sports. They're doing our special 2021 NCAA Final Four preview show. We got some big guests. I got some great co-hosts. Mac for the Mac and Jack Sports Show. Welcome, Mac.
How are we doing today, guys?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Big Shaw from the Big Shaw Sports Show. All of these shows on Northeast Streaming Sports, by the way. You can catch us on Facebook. You can catch us on YouTube. Some of the shows you can catch on some other outlets, and all of them you can catch on, gosh, help me out, Pandora, on iHeart, on not iTunes yet, I guess.
Yes, we're on iTunes.
We're on iTunes.
We're on iTunes. We're on Zodiac TV. We're on almost every outlet, Instagram, Twitter, anywhere. Major audio or media outlets. Northeast Streaming Sports is on all right now.
So. Excellent. Well, guys, we're here tonight previewing the NCAA final, which, God, it's been crazy leading up to this. I mean, there's been some wild games, wild upsets. At the end of the day, we get two number ones in Gonzaga and Baylor. We get a number 2 in Houston and a number 11 in UCLA. And we're going to have some great guests to talk about both the tournament we're looking at today. And every one of the guests we have today has, except for Tom Keegan, the sports writer, has experience playing in the Final Four or has won, at least one, and in some cases multiple NCAA championships. Right. Rex Walters from Kansas will be on here in a few minutes. Tom Keegan, the sports writer, as I mentioned. Butch Lee from Marquette, 1977 world champion. Rex, I apologize. I said you had won, by the way. I'll apologize when you get on the show. You did lose in the semis when you were there, but you still have the experience in the Final Four. Larry Farmer from UCLA, 3-time NCAA champion. And Gene Smith from Georgetown, 1984 NCAA champions, and played with some great guys. All these guys played with some great players. Before Rex comes on about 7:15 or so, he's going to be phoning in, by the way. He's having some internet issues at his home down in New Orleans. He's a coach now with the Pelicans. Let's talk a little bit about how we got here, guys. I mean, we're going to end up with a tournament here where somebody wins their first national championship because 3 of them have not won any, or one team is going to add to their all-time record of 11 national championships. It's going to be a long shot for that 12th championship for UCLA. But, guys, we saw some crazy stuff. Number 1 seeds going out or number 2 seeds going out in the first round. Mm-hmm. Number 1's going out to 8 seeds, and then that 8 seed gets beat by a 12 seed. And we saw some crazy stuff. What's your take so far on what it took to get here? I'll start with you, Mac. I mean, what's your big takeaway from the tournament so far?
Well, the biggest takeaway for me, Keith, is that because of COVID, with all the teams playing within their divisions, we really didn't get to see, the better teams play against the better teams across the country. And another one is that the bigger teams that normally are there in the end, the Dukes, the Kentuckys, the Missouris, teams like this adopted a new policy that Kentucky started where they were letting the freshmen after the freshman year go to the NBA. Yeah. And it worked for a little while with them. But as Kentucky found out, Duke found out as they adopted this new strategy or new way of doing the way they run things over there, it's become maybe just a depot instead of really seasoning these kids. So you see the smaller schools that have 3-4 year players with the chemistry. Now they're the ones that are kind of surging to the top in the tournaments and these in basketball and college basketball overall. So I think either the NBA or the NCAA has got to kind of change the rule a little bit, or the Dukes and the Kentuckys that have this kind of way of doing things right now are going to have to try to change that, or you're going to see the smaller schools. Not that Gonzaga is smaller, Keith.
Not anymore. They're a power school now. They're not
right
anymore.
But now they are a powerhouse in the league, right?
Yeah.
It's not the Dukes. It's not the Kentuckys. It's not the Missouris. It's not Kansas, right? It's Gonzaga, believe it or not, because they have players that stay there, and they got chemistry, and they're learning basketball. And Baylor, Gonzaga, Houston. Now these teams are starting to go to the front. So what I think is going to happen is one or two things, Keith. Either they're going to use that stupid G League they're talking about, where you pay players, or they're going to have to do something like the NFL does, where they keep players in college longer, mandatory, and or the bigger schools are going to compete with the smaller schools now, which is a little crazy.
Yeah. They'll figure out a way to get it done. The Dukes are never going to go away for good. They're going to figure it out. How about you, Sean? Unscripted saying, make sure you represent well tonight. So,
yeah, I'm gonna do my best. But it's just weird not seeing Duke or those big schools in the tournament. As long as I've been watching college basketball, I'm used to seeing Duke, and Kentucky, being represented in the tournament. And with the COVID-19, it's been bad. It's been very, very bad. At one time, I thought that the college basketball was going to maybe stop, for a minute, because it was getting out of control at one time. Because you couldn't see the big games, that was on the schedule. I mean, there was a lot of big games on the schedule that we missed, and hopefully, everything can get better for next season, and we can have these big games, these big marquee matchups. I can't tell you how many great games that was on the schedule. And I said, man, I want to see this game. I want to see it. And due to COVID, it just knocked it all out. But I hope, that it can get better and we can get these marquee games back and get the fans back in the stadiums too. So that's what I'm looking forward to next season.
Well, the biggest matchup of the year, at least in hindsight, that did get canceled was Baylor against Gonzaga, interestingly enough. And we are going to get a chance to see that.
We'll see that.
Maybe.
We're going to talk about that. I got to talk about that one.
It's going to be a great. We got, again, 4 really, really, it's a very interesting mix of teams, I think. I mean, you've got Houston. Well, let's start with Gonzaga. Gonzaga is the new kid on the block, really, still. Mm-hmm. But they're in the top 5 programs in the country right now, for sure, year after year. And they're in their second Final Four. They lost in a final to North Carolina already. Mm-hmm. Baylor's in their third Final Four. Hasn't been there in, I think, 71 years, if I'm not mistaken, was the last time they were in the Final Four. Never won a national championship. You've got Houston in their 6th Final Four. Never won a national championship. And, of course, you got UCLA, who is the blue blood of all blue bloods. Until, maybe not in the last, 15 years or whatever. But you can't – there's no – they're the team that college basketball got put on the map by early on in the 60s, I think. So, I mean, guys, let's start with – as we wait for our first guest here, we got a little bit of time. Mm-hmm. What has been the biggest surprise in a tournament for you? For me, easily UCLA getting to the Final Four is the biggest surprise of all for me. Yeah. They were one of the last teams in the they were probably the last team in the tournament, potentially. They were one of the last 4 in, and they had to play in that first 4. But for you guys, what's the biggest surprise of the tournament so far? It doesn't have to be a team in the Final Four, but what's your biggest takeaway? I'll start with you, Big Shaw.
Man, I gotta say, I gotta represent my team. Alabama losing, they hurt me. They broke my heart. It's the free throws, man. The free throws. You gotta make your free throws, and that's what killed Alabama. One thing that killed them, man. You gotta make your free throws. I was pulling for my guys to go at least to the Final Four, at least, but we ran into trouble against UCLA. I don't even like UCLA. I gotta admit it. I don't like UCLA, but.
Get that out of your system before Larry Farmer gets here.
I can't lie. UCLA, to their greatness, they play some defense. I'm not gonna lie about it. UCLA was, hey, them guys can play some defense. They can shoot. They can shoot all over the court. Alabama, I don't know what happened. They really disappointed me. They didn't play their best game to me. They got stars on the court. Petty, he didn't show up. The last two games. I don't know where he was. So I just hope maybe next year that Alabama can get over the hump. But I will say this: the team that shocked me the most, and I picked them to beat Ohio State. Oral Roberts, I think I was the only one in the world that picked them to beat Ohio State. And I like seeing the Cinderella teams, for a while. It's fun to see those small schools beat the big schools and everybody get mad. Oh my God, But that's the part of the tournament. That's what made the tournament so fun to watch, and I enjoyed it. Every last bit of it. But Alabama, y'all broke my heart. Hopefully next year we can go all the way. Hopefully next year.
Well, you got a good coach, and you're off to a great building block. I think here.
Yeah,
How about you, Mac? What's your most surprising takeaway?
Well, mine is maybe the Big East, Keith. We didn't get one team in the Final Four there this year. I mean, Villanova with that injury, Gillespie, that really hurt them. Georgetown, gets and wins the Big East, and maybe it was just that one tournament they didn't have enough gas to do it at NCAA. UConn looked like it was going to really do something, and they fell short. And then Creighton really looked good coming in too. And the powerhouse of college at one time. You're talking the Big East that had UConn and had Maryland that had, St. John's and Syracuse at one time ruled the Big East. And it looked like the Big East was going to come up and do something this year. And they fizzled out. They really couldn't handle it. So I'm thinking maybe next year that these teams really go a little bit farther in the tournament. Mm-hmm. But I was kind of disappointed that one of the teams didn't break through to the Final Four this year.
Yeah, I'll give you I'll expand on my biggest surprise. And on my Sunday show, which is kind of a stream of consciousness, we go through a lot of things. I have a lot of interaction with my guests in the room. One of them is here tonight, Rick Sherlock. Hello. And you'll get a kick out of this because I've been pumping Gonzaga because I think they're by far the best team in the country. And one of my other guests, who's a very good friend of mine, kept talking about West Coast basketball is terrible. West Coast basketball is terrible. It's awful. Look at the Pac-12. It's terrible. Well, the Pac-12 had 3 teams in the Elite 8, guys. Yeah. They got a team in the Final Four. Yeah. The Big 10 didn't represent. The Big 12, well, they got Baylor there, but overall they kind of underperformed. And the SEC. And Big Shaw's team, unfortunately, they underperformed. But the Pac-12 was left standing with a bunch of teams at the end. That's one of the biggest surprises to me. And your underdog pick, Mac, USC was in the mix there.
Yeah, I mean Oregon and Oregon State both did really well this year. USC came out and at the beginning of the year, I just watched a couple of their games and they just looked explosive. They didn't have enough horses, to win, which is, I mean, to me, they did a great job. And Keith, when you're playing during COVID and you're not playing any other teams, it's easy to look at these teams and say, well, they're really great. Well, they're playing in a division that might be weak, right? So, I mean, they might be the greatest of the weak division, but we don't know how they're going to do outside that division. So Agreed. I think that led to a lot of different people thinking like the Big Ten was really going to do really good this year. And, of course, they fell on their face.
No, and the fact that we talked about it, these mid-majors or smaller schools, however you want to classify them, they don't have one and dones. They got kids that stay there 3-4 years and they grow and they get better. And they played in the tournament a lot of these teams, right? So they got experience and it matters this time of year.
Sure. So
I think it's going to be a really exciting weekend. I wish the games were a little earlier on Saturdays, to be honest with you. I mean, 5:15 and 8:30, I think. But so it's not too bad. I've had a tough week, man, staying up till 12:30 trying to watch these games.
Yeah.
Because I don't sleep. I'm up at 5:30 in the morning. So let's see what else we got. What else we want to cover before Rex gets here? Let's talk about these coaches. So you got a fine mix of coaches here too. Scott Drew has done a tremendous job building this Baylor program. his first Final Four. He's going against Calvin Sampson, who has been around, and he's actually had to kind of repair his reputation because it got torn down quite a bit from his time in Indiana. But he's been in a Final Four with Oklahoma before. He's got some experience. Is that going to help him and Houston in this game against Baylor? Or is it just because, to me, college is still a coach's game?
Yeah.
The players got to play, but it's still a coach's game, unlike the NBA, which is a player's game. Mm-hmm. Is there any advantage with Calvin Sampson and his experience over Scott Drew and his Baylor Bears? Shaw?
I think so. Sampson, he has the experience. When he was in Indiana, his reputation kind of went like this. So,
yeah.
With him in Houston, he's rebuilding it back up, and his reputation also. I'm not, a big Houston Cougars fan, but I will say this: I'm happy to see what he's doing in Houston. It makes me be like, hey, this man he's really trying to bring his reputation back up, because some people don't know what happened in Indiana. I'm not going to talk about it, but he went through a lot, and to me, he seems like he's refreshed and he's a better, a different person. So I like what he's doing in Houston, and I hope he can continue doing well. But in Baylor's going to beat Houston. That's my prediction. I know my guys in Unscripted, they don't like that, but because Jay's a Houston fan, he's a Houston man. So I like Baylor. I like what they're doing over there in Baylor. They're doing really good. So
I like Baylor myself.
I like what the coach is doing in Baylor. But the thing is, them boys can shoot in Baylor. They really can. They can shoot, and they're physical. But I kind of like what Sampson is doing in Houston. I can't lie. I love it. I love seeing those kids play hard. Hopefully, if the guys, they can come back because of the coronavirus and do it again and get better. But I love what they're doing in Houston. Coach Sampson, good job. But Baylor, they're going to beat y'all.
How about you, Mac? What do you got to say?
Well, listen, Sampson only coach in Indiana. I mean, he's a former Rockets assistant coach. I mean,
yeah,
he's been in 15 NCAA tournament games. Talk about experience, right? Yeah. Drew's the younger guy, right? He's the Kyle Shanahan of basketball right now, if you want to make an analogy, right? He's the new hot guy on the scene. He's coach of the year a couple of years in a row. I tell you right now, I like Houston's chances, guys. I really do. I think Houston can upset Baylor. I don't know if they could beat Gonzaga, but I think Houston can upset Baylor. Baylor's a great team, very defensive team. But I'm telling you, when you have a coach with that much knowledge, being in that many different places, whatever happened to him in Indiana, we'll leave alone. But with that, as much experience as this guy has, I mean, that's going to cause a common effect on the players, calming them down a little bit. And I think they have a real good shot at going ahead and beating Baylor in this game.
Yeah, I like Baylor, and we can't undersell. I mean, we can't undersell Scott Drew. It's not like he's inexperienced. He's got 18 years at Baylor. I mean, and he's built a program that was, when he took it over, was dead. Probably a bad analogy to use with Baylor basketball, but the program was in a lot of trouble, right? It couldn't go any lower, and he's turned it around. He's been in, gosh, I don't know, 7 or 8 NCAA tournaments, so it's not like he's got no experience. And I think it's a very interesting matchup of coaching. I think this game's going to be, this game might go into the hundreds. I don't know, but it's possible.
It could.
I've got myself 91-85. 91-85 Baylor is my pick.
Oh, you're calling the score. I mean, look at it. I mean, you're confident there, Keith. What
not going to fool around here tonight, Mac.
Listen, Houston's gonna win at 88-86. Watch.
Our live feed is frozen up. Let me check something here, guys. You guys talk amongst yourselves. See what's going on.
Talk amongst yourselves. Sean, what's going on, partner?
Oh, listen, not much.
Listen, Houston upsets them. Houston upsets Baylor. That's my pick. I think Gonzaga wins it all. UCLA takes a lot out of Gonzaga, and that Saturday coming up, Houston has a chance, though. I like Houston, man. I just like Houston. I like Houston. So we'll see what happens.
I just don't like Houston.
What, the town or the team, my friend? Which one?
I don't like nothing about Houston. So I'm gonna give it with Baylor. I'm going with Baylor. But they're gonna beat them.
Okay, all right.
But Gonzaga's gonna win anyway.
We'll see what happens, man. You never know. You never know.
Yeah,
how we doing?
Looks like we're all right.
Yeah, it could be. I think we've been fine. I don't know. Sometimes feeds, you know how they work. So.
Yeah. I wanted to check it out.
Bad here,
we're back. Now he says we're back, so we're good. Thanks, Rick, for
April Fools, Keith. April Fools.
We need a technical director.
You know what I mean?
Waited a few hours for that April Fool's.
Yeah, that's right.
I just got a message from Rex Walter. He should be calling here in a couple of minutes. So
beautiful. So Keith, Houston upsets Baylor. That's my pick.
You don't want to give me a score?
Yeah, 88-86, man. Overtime.
88-86. Okay, sorry, I didn't hear that. Okay. Yeah, Did you give me a score? Did you give me a score, Shaw?
I think Baylor, they're gonna be Houston. It's gonna be close. It's gonna be close. I can see this game probably being 84 Baylor, 79 Houston. But here's my thing. Houston is physical too. Baylor is physical. So, and they're both fast and they go up and down the court. So Baylor has to try to slow down Houston. If they can slow down Houston, they'll win. If you don't, and you get Houston hot, this is gonna be a bad day for Baylor. Bad day. But I'm staying with Baylor. I can't pick Houston for nothing.
I really love the guard play on Baylor, man. I think to me that's the tipping point. And this time of year, it's good guard play and veteran guard play that gets this done.
Oh yeah,
and I think that's where the difference is in the backcourts here. Mm-hmm. Not that Houston's is a slouch, but I think just Baylor's is just a notch above. So,
well, Keith, the forward play, it seems, in college is a lot more important than the forward play in the NBA. If you notice, the biggest stars, I should say, not all of them, but some of the biggest stars are the forwards in college right now, and that's because they're a running gun. And they try to get down low more than the NBA does. So I don't know. I think I like Houston's forwards. I really do.
Well, that's the thing about matchups, right? Can their front court outshine the backcourt of the Baylor Bears?
There you go.
It'll be fun, and we'll find out. That game is at 5:15. I think the games are on TBS. I forgot to check that. It's so hard. We used to always know they were on CBS, but now you don't know where to find games.
Every game.
What's that?
Every game.
Yeah, it's good that every game is on, right? But it's hard to find the games that you want. So, before we move on, I was hoping we'd get Rex in here before we move on to our next topic. I don't want to get in the middle. There he is. I hope. Hold on a second. Not sure why I'm not getting this in my
AT&T. You never can depend on them. I don't know what is with AT&T.
Hi, Rex. Hang on, Rex. Not sure why I don't have more volume on Rex. Are you there?
Yeah.
How about now? Can you guys hear Rex?
A little bit. It's a little low, but I can hear him.
Say hi again, Rex.
Hi.
Hi here, Rex.
Just a little bit.
Well, Rex, we're going to make this work somehow. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing okay. How are you doing?
Excellent. What do you got? Some storms going on? Lose your internet, or is it just a bad provider?
I don't know. AT&T was trying to. Honestly, I don't know. We've been AT&T for a while. They wanted to charge us more. We didn't know anything about it. We just moved here in New Orleans. So when they did that, they cut off our internet. So tomorrow they're coming out. They need a technician to come in. I really don't understand it. My wife is all fired up about it. So
that's what you need
tomorrow, but it doesn't help us today.
Yeah, you need a fired up wife to take care of these problems.
Oh yeah, she's gonna get it done.
You get stuff done. There's no question.
Well, Rex, I appreciate you coming on. I'm joined tonight by the co-host of Mac and Jack show on Northeast Streaming Sports, Mac McGrath. Say hello to Mac.
What's going on, Rex?
Hey, Mac. How are you doing?
Good,
and I've
sir.
got Sorry, and I've got Big Shaw from the Big Shaw Sports Podcast with us as well. Rex,
thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. It's funny, Rex. I was joking with these guys earlier that all week I've been promoting the fact that you had won a national championship at Kansas. So I don't know whether to apologize or you'll be happy with the fact that I had you winning that that Final Four and not losing to North Carolina, rather.
Well, if you can figure out a way to go back in time and change history, I might have been drafted a little bit higher. I might have made a little more money, but I'm okay with it. It is what it is. We didn't win it. We lost to Carolina, and Carolina ended up beating Michigan. We played both those teams that year and lost to both of them. So you can make a case that maybe we're the third or probably fourth best team because Kentucky was really good too with Jamal Mashburn. So that was a pretty good Final Four. We were the only 2 seed that year as well.
Well, that was an interesting too, and we want to concentrate a little bit. And I know you with you wrapped up in the pro game, you haven't had a lot of opportunity to watch the college game. So we'll get your prediction on the games before you leave. But let's focus a little bit on that '93 Final Four. It had a lot of interest, not just for Kansas fans and Michigan fans and Indiana fans and North Carolina fans, but it had the luxury in that semifinal of having a matchup of your coach Roy Williams against his mentor, the great Dean Smith. How did that factor in, and what was it like for you guys to be part of that matchup?
Well, there was no need for much scouting report. Like we both knew each other already because we ran very, very similar stuff. We were a motion offense team. We both ran secondary break. We both ran box sets. There was nothing like that. Was just going to be just a grit, a game of grit, toughness, and physicality. They were one of the most physical teams that we've played all year. I always said this. And I said this after play. I felt them. When you set a screen, you felt them because they're used to getting through screens. When you drive to the basket, you felt them because they had length and athleticism with Eric Montross and George Lynch. That was a game of just toughness, and they made a few more plays down the stretch, and unfortunately, they got the W. And Michigan was very similar. Michigan, physical more for different reasons. They weren't quite as old. They were still the Fab Five, but I want to say they were sophomores that year, maybe freshmen. But they were just physically imposing when you talk about Juwan Howard, Chris Webber. Their guards were good with Jalen Rose. But they played a lot of zone against us. I thought we played a lot of zone against them in Hawaii. We played them in the Rainbow Classic, and I didn't have a great term. I was still going through some stuff with my ankle. Didn't have a great term. I played okay against them. I would have liked to have had another crack at them, but of course we lost to Carolina. But yeah, the matchup between Coach Smith and Coach Williams, there's just no secrets. We just knew each other really well, and had never played against each other. There was just no reason for a scouting report. Was
Coach Williams fired up to beat North Carolina that day, or what's your take on his where his head was that day?
Well, I think it's always the ultimate test when you go against your mentor, the person that you look up to the most. You use it as a measuring stick. In '91, they had actually beaten North Carolina to go, and they ended up losing to Duke in the national championship. So I don't think he was quite as nervous as maybe the first time. I never sensed Coach Williams he was ever nervous about a game. I could tell when he was fired up for a game. We played Louisville at home my junior year and lost. I could tell he was fired up for that game. No, he was pretty much even keel the entire time. But I'm sure there were some feelings of, hey, I'd like to prove myself against a guy that he looks up to. I mean, he speaks in reverence about Coach Smith.
I'm sure.
So I know that was obviously an important game for him. But wasn't bad when we lost because, as much as it probably hurt him in '91 to see, you never want to see someone you love in pain. And, in coaching, when you lose, there is pain and regret and second guessing. So I know he wasn't upset. that Coach Smith was going on and having a chance to win a national championship and end up winning it.
Yeah, Mac, you got something you wanted to?
Yeah, Rex, as players, and I played sports and I've coached sports. I mean, certain games, players get.
Hang on one second. You can't hear Mac?
Can you hear me now, Rex?
Bear with me 1 second.
Go right ahead.
How about now?
Can you hear me now, Rex?
I'm hearing nothing.
Damn.
Okay.
All you can hear is me.
Why don't you ask him for me?
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Ask me a question, Mac. That's okay.
For me, Keith, ask him if being a player of a coach that goes up against his own coach, his own predecessor, does that fire the team up more, or do you want to win it more, a game more like that for instead of just a regular game where he's going up against his former coach? Does that make the team more fired up?
Yeah, Rex, Mac is kind of elaborating a little bit on what we talked about, that you guys as a team, did you feel more fired up to win the game for your coach in that situation, for Coach Williams over Coach Smith?
Well, obviously, we all have great love for Coach Williams. We feel the same way that he probably feels about Dean Smith. But I wanted to play in a national championship.
Yeah,
that was my whole thing, to be honest with you. And I knew it was going to be a difficult game. And I love Coach Williams, and he's been unbelievable to me. And in my 51 years on this earth, I mean, since I've met him, he's been great to me. But no, I wanted to win a national championship. I wanted to beat those guys and have a chance, because obviously now that's the biggest stage of college basketball to play for a national championship. And the other thing, too, is when you're playing an NCAA tournament and you're a senior, there's finality to it. So you're playing what could be your last game. So when that's the case, and it's so different than it is nowadays, guys are leaving early all the time. Back then, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So, there's even more passion, I would think. The media has gone crazy with March Madness. You got guys that don't even follow college basketball that are on the, and they do a great job. It's entertaining, but that's where it's gotten to now. It's more entertainment value. There's more coverage, social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. It's on 4 different stations to start the first weekend. So it's gone crazy with that. But I would guess, and this is me at 51, like when you have seniors playing in those games, right, there is a lot more invested in those things than maybe it is today. Because guys are just looking for what you hear the word platform all the time. They're looking to raise their platform and have a platform to showcase what they can do. Back then, it was like you want to win a national championship for yourself, for your teammates, for your school, not to improve your draft status or anything like that.
Yeah. Let me, I'm going to add Tom Keegan, sports writer Tom Keegan, who remembers you, Rex, from your days at Northwestern. I don't know if you remember Tom's name or not, but I'm going to bring him in. Hopefully you'll be able to hear somebody. Let's see. I tried something. I don't know if it'll work or not, but let's welcome Tom in, and we'll get back to you in a second, Rex, if you want to hang on there. Welcome, Tom Keegan.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And that's a great point Rex was saying about seniors are more invested in everything. Now it's just a platform to get to the NBA. Yeah. And that's why this year's tournament has been kind of a throwback. It's been really interesting. Out of the Elite 8 teams, you only had 5 freshman starters. Yeah. And then you look at Scott Drew, used to recruit a bunch of one-and-dones. Didn't get to the Final Four with them. Now he's gone. He went 4 years in a row without a single top 100 recruit. And he got some transfers. This is his best team. So it's definitely a throwback tournament. You look at Shaka Smart, who was just hired by Marquette. He has 0 top 100 recruits in 6 years at VCU.
Yeah, I'll get back to you.
And now, he recruits 13 of them, not even counting this 2021 class, and went 0-3 in the tournament. He won 7 games at VCU in the tournament. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to welcome you because Rex can't hear any of us except me for some reason. So I'm going to finish up with Rex and let him go. So I apologize for the inconvenience. Rex, while we can still hear you, I do appreciate you coming on and sharing those memories of Kansas. And you've been more than, I know you're busy with the Pelicans, especially during the middle of the NBA season. So I appreciate you coming on. What I'm going to ask you is to give me, I know you haven't watched a lot of college basketball, but let's get your prediction on I'm going to ask you on the Houston Baylor game, who you think might win that game?
A long time ago, Kelvin Sampson, he was a coach at Washington State, and I just remember afterwards. It's funny, Kelvin Sampson came to my home. Didn't know much about Washington State. Didn't know much about Coach Sampson. My father loved him, said this guy is going to do great things as a coach. And then he actually went to my high school and watched me play, and Bill Guthridge showed up from North Carolina. That kind of took Coach Sampson back. Where is this coming from? I didn't know I was recruiting. But great coach. I don't watch basketball.
It just went low, Keith.
Would like because of my job and doing scouting reports and preparing for teams. But I'll say this: I'm rooting for Kelvin Sampson because of how hard his guys play, how tough his guys are. It's not a blue blood, and they just really, really guard. Like, I enjoy watching his teams play because of that. Like, not always the best shooting team, not the most fancy offense, but they really, really sit down and guard. And if there's one team that can win it on, it would be really a neat story because they've had obviously more talented teams in Houston when you talk about the Phi Slamma Jamma and Akeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler, Michael Young. But it would be interesting if they could, because there's one team that they're going to sit down and guard you. So I would love to see them win it. And it's a great story. He's winning a national championship. And obviously, I think, most people say some mistakes were made when he was in Indiana. But for him to win a national championship in the state of Indiana, in Indianapolis, close to Bloomington, that would be a pretty unique story.
Can you give UCLA any puncher's chance against Gonzaga at all?
Well, I just think what Mark Few's been able to do there, and I've said this when I coached against him at San Francisco.
Oh, he played in the same league, I forgot.
Yeah. There's not a university that is more committed to raising the bar for their basketball program and understanding what a great basketball program can do for your profile as a university in terms of admissions, in terms of applications, in terms of national recognition. You can't put a price tag on it. So for them to take this step, and it's a crazy year. I don't think we saw the best basketball when you can't practice on a continuous basis, when you don't know if you're going to have a season, when you don't know you're going to have a Final Four. But what he's been able to do has been phenomenal. I haven't seen a lot of UCLA. I remember seeing Jazang play. He played for a high school coach that had worked for me back in the day in Dave Vivo. So, but I just think that Gonzaga might just be too good. They've got, Suggs is a heck of a player. Down the line, they've got experience with Timmy and all the different players on their team. That'll be a really tough one. Talent-wise, they may have a puncher's chance, but they're going to have to play their A game, and they're going to have to figure out a way to get Gonzaga to play their C game, which I think will be really difficult.
Yeah, I'd forgot about your connection, to Gonzaga from your time coaching San Francisco. So, you're gonna pick your old rival Mark Few, or are you gonna pick the coach who wanted you to come to Washington State to win it all?
Well, if there was a bullet to my head, I would pick Gonzaga. But I would love to see, and nothing against Mark. I like Mark a lot. I enjoyed competing against him when I was back in the West Coast. We had some good nights against them. We had some tough nights against them. But I would love to see Coach Sampson win it. He's always been good to me. We don't talk very often at all, but when I do see him, he's always cordial and nice. And I think it's a great story. I do. I think it's a great story at Houston with a team that's probably not as talented, but the great thing about college basketball that I think really holds true is sometimes the most talented team doesn't win, and I would say Gonzaga is definitely the most talented team. But the best team does. The best team always wins. So on one particular night, I would love to see Houston but I think it's going to be Gonzaga at the very end.
Oh, you did a good job of covering all your bases there, I think, Rex. So good job there. Listen, I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on. It's funny. I know we had the last time I talked to you on the side of the road in your car, and tonight you had no internet. So you've gone the extra mile trying to make this work, and we had a few technical difficulties. I apologize, but I know the guys all appreciate you coming on, and we'll kind of discuss your remarks amongst the group. So I'll excuse you from the class. And hey, listen, good luck with the rest of the season. You guys have been playing well lately.
We have. Hopefully we can stay healthy. I think that's the biggest thing. We keep Zion healthy, Brandon healthy, get Zoe back on the court. We've got a good group with Steven Adams and obviously Eric Bledsoe with some good bench players. So we're excited about it. Hopefully we can make a run and get into the playing game. Hopefully even better, get into one of the top 8 seeds.
Excellent. Well, we'll have you on again sometime after you guys make the playoffs and make an unbelievable run to the NBA Finals. How about that?
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming, Rex. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, guys. I don't know how that works. I've used the phone before and never had that problem. But I've never had people in the room when I did it. I only did it on my show when I'm there by myself. So we'll have to kind of work that out. You guys could all kind of hear what Rex was saying. He's kind of picking Gonzaga, it sounds like, over Houston, but he'd like to see Houston win. So anyway, Tom, let me welcome you a little bit more. You met Mac at the Big East preview show.
How are you doing, Mac?
And we got Big Shaw with us from the Big Shaw Sports Podcast, also on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. So say hi to Tom.
How you doing, sir?
Good. Pleased to be with you.
Tom's excited because he already got his Marquette plug in already for the night. Good job there. But Tom will be much happier tonight than he was, I guess, during the Big East tournament, because we're going to have one of Tom's favorite players on here in a few minutes. I did get confirmation that he'll be on a little bit. Butch Lee from Marquette, 1977 champions. So while we're waiting, Tom, give us a little bit. You've covered, I think when you and I were talking 20 NCAA tournaments. So tell us a little bit about. I got to get Butch in here though, but give us a little idea of how the tournaments change in the time that since you started to now.
Well, like I said, I think this is a throwback tournament because we're seeing more upperclassmen and we're not seeing these many freshmen at all.
Yeah.
Now, I have covered 20 tournaments, but my favorite tournament ever. I thought it was bad timing that my two brothers were at Marquette in 1977. One was a senior, one was a freshman. I missed by a year, but it's one of my greatest memories ever because my father and I was one of 10 children. We were watching it, the two of us, in the den that usually had like 10 people in it, this tiny den. And he got a call from my brother who was in Atlanta watching the Butch and Bo show. And then my other brother who was in Milwaukee running to Lake Michigan and back with the rest of the student body. And it's one of my greatest memories ever. So I'm glad that I didn't finish high school in 3 years and go to Marquette a year early.
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't think I can give Butch Lee much better of an intro than that. So I'm going to get Butch into this conversation right now since I see him adjusting his camera, getting himself all set there. And as I mentioned, and Tom also mentioned, from the 1977 NCAA champions, Butch Lee from Marquette. Welcome, Butch.
How you doing? Good evening, Keith, and all your other guests. I already started smiling when I saw that St. Peter shirt, and then I hear Marquette, so I'm in good company.
I didn't even notice that Tom wore that St. Peter shirt. So you guys don't know, Tom, Mac and Butch. I've got Mac from the Mac and Jack Sports Show with me tonight, and also Big Shaw from Big Shaw Sports Podcast. Butch's son is a starting guard at St. Peter's in New York City. So
where's number 15 also?
He does, yeah. So
Nice.
I think you know Tom was just up there.
I'm fine. He's a big fan of Allen Iverson. He wanted number 3, but they didn't have it, so he had to settle with 15.
So I take you over Allen Iverson. You know what nobody has noticed though is the poster on my wall. This is my desk at home, and if you look at the poster behind me, can you tell who's on it?
It's a little small.
Okay.
See if I can make him bigger.
Dean Memminger's holding up the NIT trophy. Then on the other side of the poster is number 15 for Marquette, driving the team to the national title in 1977.
Yeah, that's a great
Nice.
look there.
Yeah.
Great. It was a great.
I'm seeing everybody pretty small. Is that how everybody looks, or I'm doing something wrong?
No, it's just the way we got it to get us all in the room. We get a little. You're a little smaller because I'm thinking you're on your phone, right? So, there you're big now. There you go. If you go sideways, you get a better shot. But
okay, let me see how that works.
Actually, we're all a little bigger than we were in college. Hey, I've always wanted to ask you this question because everybody knew you had great teammates. Lloyd Walton early in your career. Obviously, the Butch and Bo show was for my money, the greatest show ever, even better than Drexler and Elijah, Ernie and Bernie. But two guys that maybe other people don't talk about a lot, small forwards, one at the beginning of your career and one at the end of your career, who are unbelievably talented. And I want to ask you, who was a better pure talent, Earl Tatum, who you played with for 2 years, or Oliver Lee, Vince Carter's uncle, who you played with for 1 year when Oliver was a freshman?
Well, Oliver Lee was he was a super talent. Both of those guys were pretty good. Oliver Lee was more a little slippery. He was a little bit like Cornbread Maxwell. You know, he can fit into any seam, Oliver Lee. And then Earl, the difference with Earl had that jump shot that, you know, once you gave him a little room, you can count that sweet jump shot that he had. So one was a little more perimeter, and Oliver Lee with that great ability, he could slither to the basket and get you a lot of points like that.
And you shot like Tatum and you slithered like Oliver. So you had the best of both worlds. And you had Jerome Whitehead's strength.
I had such a great upbringing in basketball. You know, I lived just a couple of blocks on 153rd Street and 8th Avenue. I lived just a couple of blocks from the Rucker Park. So as I was growing up, I got a chance to see guys like Tiny Archibald and Julius Erving, Joe Hammond. And then at that same time for the Knicks, you had Earl Monroe and Walt Frazier. So being an up and coming guard, you know, I tell you, I had the best training of any basketball player or that you can have, really, you know. So I was very fortunate that the area I grew up in and being around those great players.
Is that why you picked number 15? Earl Monroe, I think, wore number 15.
Of course, yeah, because I started off with number 10, but when he came to the Knicks and he had to use 15, then I kind of moved along with him.
Nice, my two favorite guards.
So Butch, let me take you back to 1977, and that you and I talked about it here a few weeks ago, but I like to recount a little bit of this couple of the stories that we talked about. Your guys' run was a little bit unexpected because it was an uneven season for you guys that year, and Al McGuire had announced his retirement, I think, in December of that year, if I'm not mistaken, right? And you had some nail biters during the tournament. You told me about a scene in the locker room at halftime of it might have been the Kansas State game. Maybe you can help me out with Coach McGuire.
That was Cincinnati. That was our first game of the tournament with Cincinnati. And Al was pretty serious about his basketball, you know, but he would let us kind of get away with being a little ourselves. You know, he wasn't that strict as far as how we had to act. And he even let guys kind of argue with him sometimes. And I think in that game, I don't know what happened in the first half, but he started talking some stuff to Bernard Toombs. So at halftime, he got close to Toombs and he had his hand in Bernard's face. And Bernard kind of smacked his hand away. And Al just kind of jumped on him and they started wrestling all over the locker room. And I didn't even know what was going on. You know, everybody started breaking it up. But we went out there in the second half like nothing happened. And it was like nothing happened to him because as I understood, he had got into situations like that before, So it was a little rowdy and crazy, but we handled it pretty good.
Al was quite a character. Was certainly quite a character. Was there any point in time? And again, you guys played a couple of nail biters in that tournament against. Kansas State was a close game, and obviously the Charlotte game in the semifinal. Was there ever a moment where you said we're just finished here?
Well, we played against Kansas State, and that was a tough team. We were down like 10 points almost the whole game, and I could not even believe that was happening. I felt like we had the team to win the national championship, but by being down by 10 points almost the whole game, I was very nervous. I remember that game as the hardest game I had during my college career.
Interesting. Mac Shaw, jump in there. What do you got to ask? The immortal. Because Tom is going to dominate this conversation if I let him get back in here. So get in quick.
Well, Mr. Butch, you're before my time, so I wasn't even born yet. But how was it to play at Marquette at that time in the 70s and stuff like that?
We had some top teams, and I think I think Al was second only to John Wooden for 20-game seasons over maybe a 10-year period. And one of the things that kind of hampered us a little bit during those years, we were one of the schools. Marquette was one of the schools that the senior big men were going hardship. We almost never had a senior big man from. I think Larry McNeil, Jim Jones, Maurice Lucas. And I think that would have kind of put us over the top that we might even have won a couple more championships during that span if our big man didn't leave early to the NBA draft.
Great point. Great point.
I got two questions for you, Butch. It's kind of crazy. You just mentioned UCLA and John Wooden. How UCLA now is the Cinderella story, and Gonzaga is a powerhouse now. And I believe that, with the one and dones, with the freshmen leaving after their freshman year, it's kind of hampered the bigger schools now. Kansas, Duke, Kentucky, North Carolina, Indiana, all these big schools that are normally in there in the end, they're losing their players to the NBA and the smaller to mid schools now with the more seasoned, experienced players working together as a team are now kind of coming to the top. So, first of all, do you think it's kind of crazy now that Gonzaga is the powerhouse in UCLA, the great UCLA Bruins is now the Cinderella? And second, do you think that something should be done to change that, the one and done policy that some of these colleges have?
Well, I'm happy for Gonzaga. Getting a college education is a great thing, and it's kind of it's like the foundation for a good and hopefully a prosperous life. So I like that situation, but I also think that the guys that have the ability, just like a lot of other sports, once you're ready physically, at least that's how you feel. You should have an opportunity to go play professional like they do in tennis and boxing when you feel that you're ready. It's a little awkward because, I talk a lot about Bill Walton. Bill Walton is one of the best players I've ever seen at UCLA. And now people see UCLA, they don't even know the history and the type of teams they had over the years. So it's a little awkward watching Gonzaga be number one and UCLA is like an 11 seed, but it's all good.
Very interesting for sure. But I don't think I asked this question quite the way I wanted to ask it when I had you on before. When you were playing in that championship game in '77 against North Carolina and Dean Smith, did Butch Lee have any extra motivation because of not being on the U.S. Olympic team the year before?
A lot of people ask me that question, and really, I
When Dean Smith
didn't. I try to play. I just try to play good basketball all the time. Before that, I went to 5-star basketball camp after my junior year in high school, and I still had the record. I scored 50 points in one game. And, I always try to play good basketball, so I didn't have anything against anyone. I thought that I was a very good player, and I try to establish that every time I played. I never did go to a game thinking I need to beat this team, or I need to beat this coach, or I need to play good against this player. I just try to play my best basketball, and I practice hard to do that in the big moments.
Coach, to your point about Marquette being second behind UCLA in wins in the decade, I don't think people realize how huge Marquette basketball was. Marquette basketball was so big back then that they had a cheerleader who was the most famous in the whole country, Gal Pudvan. They had, everything was famous. Everyone was huge back then, and but at the same time, it seemed like a down to earth place to me. Like, you players didn't get big heads because you were the best team in the country. Was there something about the city of Milwaukee that was a good place for that to be happening?
Well, I thought that Al did a great job with the players, letting everybody be themselves. Most of the top players at Marquette were from the inner cities. Mostly Chicago and New York, and we had good camaraderie. When I went to Marquette, I didn't know how they played. Afterwards, I found out some people was like, "Oh, don't go to Marquette. They play real slow basketball, and it's not your style." But they played winning basketball, and that was my style pretty much. But I think that most of the guys came from similar backgrounds, inner city backgrounds, and we really just hit it off. When I went to Marquette and I got around Bo and Lloyd, I felt very comfortable, and not to mention they had an opening at the guard position that was very intriguing also.
Well, you played with some great players, and I just had a thought that just popped out of my head there, Tom. So pick me up.
Well, you go to Real Chili to eat when you're at Marquette?
Butch, I believe that chemistry is very underrated in all sports, right? I mean, you can have as much talent as you want on a team, but if that chemistry isn't there, if you don't feed off each other and work together, it really doesn't matter much, does it?
Well, that's a big thing that you just said, because the teams that win, they understand that chemistry. It's just the people on the outside, they don't really, it's hard to, you see chemistry, but you almost don't know what it is once you're looking at the game. You have to have a friendship, you have to have confidence. And you see, like I look at Gonzaga, and Gonzaga, they play such a smooth game. They don't look like they're in a hurry, and that comes from having skilled players that have the confidence, and they know each other, and that's how you kind of create chemistry. On the outside, you just see great basketball, but most people, they don't understand what that takes. It's just not just about talent, like you said. It's actually knowing your teammates, feeling good about your teammates, and having confidence in your teammates.
Well, to that point, Butch, Shaka Smart, the new coach at Marquette, when he's at VCU, those players would stay in the program for 4 years, and they developed great chemistry. They did great things at VCU. He goes to Texas, the roster's turning every year. These kids are only staying 1 year, and it didn't look like they had the same chemistry as VCU had. Did you like the hire of Shaka Smart at Marquette?
Yeah, I got a chance to meet him down here. I just talked with him just briefly, was introducing him to my son. But, every time you hire a new coach, everybody is very happy, and so let's see what happens. I think he's a good coach, and the better players you have, the better coach you become. So let's see.
That's for sure.
Although it wasn't really the case with Texas, they had great recruits, but they were freshmen. I don't know. And I think he kind of disproved that. He had better players in Texas, but they were more together at VCU.
I think he's a great fit for Marquette.
Yeah, he's a good fit.
You know, he's in between those unbelievable expectations at Texas, which are unrealistic. Their football school, and the VCU. I think Marquette is just a perfect place for him, and he may really do really well there.
I think it's a perfect place for every top recruit too, but I might be biased.
Well, maybe Butch feels the same way. Yeah. So listen, guys, I've got a special spot to play here that Mac has, and I'll let Mac do the little intro into this, I think, so that we do it correctly. Butch, I hope you'll stick around. We're taking a little break. It'll give everybody a chance to stretch their legs for a second. I got Larry Farmer coming up right after. If you want to stick around at all, Butch, I know he's almost a contemporary of yours. He's a little bit before you, but if you've got a run, that's certainly fine too. And Tom,
I can hang around for a little bit. My young son is traveling to play in the AAU tournament, and we're going to take him to the airport a little later on. But I can stick around for a while. I watch Larry Farmer, so now I get a chance to hear him talk.
Well, he's a wonderful guy. So, Mac, lead us into this little segment we're going to play here.
It's ready to go. Go ahead and just let her rip, Keith.
Let her rip? Okay, good. I've got to find my...
Hi, guys. If you're watching a main sports event like the Final Four, the NCAA Championship, the Draft, Super Bowl, or any major TV event at home, you have your snacks, your quesadillas, your Doritos, your nachos, your chips. You need one thing. You need a great dip. And we have a special guest just for that. For those who follow the Mac and Jack Sports Show, I'm a cook, been in and out of the restaurant business for about 45 years, and I cooked for many chefs. This chef is easily one of the best I've ever worked for, with, and I also consider him a good friend of mine.
Uh-oh. We got a little hiccup. All right. Well, we had a little hiccup there. Let me try one more time, and bear with me, guys. Well, we got a shorter break than I thought because we had a little hiccup in the. We got a little hiccup in our giddy up there, so Mac will probably be a little disappointed. And Tom went to get a little beer. Let's chat a little bit. Butch, how's the boy doing at St. Peter's? Is he gonna transfer to Marquette now? What's the deal?
No, I think he's doing pretty good over there. I'll tell him I was so proud of him. He was an academic All-American this year, something I wasn't able to do, but he's doing pretty good over there. He likes the guys on the team and everything, and they've been playing pretty good basketball. They had like five freshmen came in at the same time, and they've been doing pretty good.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a really that conference is going to be pretty competitive with St. Peter's playing better, Iona, obviously with Rick Pitino, and Siena playing very well up here in my area, as you and I have talked about. Hopefully we get to, maybe next year, if you're in the area when St. Peter's visits Albany, we'll get to have a little adult beverage. I'll buy you a beer.
Yeah, I'm going to see if we can work that out. I got to check their schedule next year.
Maybe Tom wants to fly in. But
absolutely. Yeah, I got cousins in Albany, so I don't have to pay for a hotel. I'd love to see Butch and Son play.
Excellent. So we ended up coming back quick because I had some technical difficulties, and the Mac, put your hat back on, Mac. Jeez. We had some technical difficulties. The video froze up on us and stopped.
Okay. All right, no problem.
I don't know what happened, but we'll work on that. We'll play it for the draft show, hopefully. So we'll tell Chef Joe. Chef Joe
from Fagata Restaurants and Zen Restaurant Group. Real good chef, and he's going to show a little bit about how to make some great dips for any big shows like the Final Four show that's coming for this Final Four show for the Final Four tournament and stuff like that. So
yeah, I'll give it another go on my show Sunday too, so we can get it played. And
that sounds great. That sounds great.
fit
No
for the
problem.
draft,
I just had to make a quick run, man. That's all.
It's okay. I saw everybody win. I put everybody on mute, and then all of a sudden the thing just stopped playing. So anyway, the hazards of live television, live streaming, live whatever. Butch, let me ask you this while we're since we're going to have to stretch a little bit for Larry Farmer to get here, and I do want to talk to Larry. You talked a little bit about how Marquette could have won more national championships as some of your big men had stood around, and I agree. The game's changed so much. Now it's a guard-oriented game, right? Especially the NCAA tournament. You get seasoned guards in here, and that's what wins the tournament, it seems. I mean, do you see a big change in the way the game's played from a perspective of it being guard-oriented versus big man-oriented?
Well, I've always thought that the game was guard oriented. Every team that's won championship had great guards. Every once in a while you did have some big guys that were very dominant players, but it's very hard to win without good guard play. You need to be able to control the game, especially in college basketball. Where the coach have more of an effect, and the players have more of an effect, and the guard being able to control the tempo of the game, that's very key. And not always they're going to be guards that score the most points, but you need to know when to get the ball to who, and that cannot be underestimated in no year. Back in the day, or even basketball right now, if you don't have a good guard, it's hard to win consistently.
People don't remember that in that 1977 title game, Marquette won 67-59. Jim Boylan, Butch's backcourt mate, who started his career at Assumption College and then transferred to Marquette, he outscored Phil Ford 14-6. And so Butch was the leading scorer of both teams, but Jim Boylan, good guard. I'm with Butch. Guards are always going to win the NCAA tournament for you. And Bo Ellis played a great game, too. Played a great defensive game. And
For sure.
what a hard player Bo was, huh?
Well, guys, not that I disagree with what you're saying, but I think forwards are just as important. If you look back, Larry Bird, you look back, to the centers that were huge back then in the NCAA, Patrick Ewing and such. I mean, you've got to have a scoring forward or somebody that's willing to get them rebounds for you too. Not that the guard play is not important, but if you look at even with Houston, their forwards are what are keeping them a lot in the games by them banging the boards and them quick, fast breaks. Of course, the guards got addition to them, on the way because that's the quarterback of the team, and I agree with that. But don't underestimate that forward play. I mean, you're talking Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, and these guys. Again, Patrick Ewing and some of the centers that won some of the NCAA championships. I mean, I know the game's changed a lot since way back when. But them forwards are just as important, especially if you're talking defense and grabbing them rebounds.
Let me make this point about the guards, right? A big guy, sometimes you can have a big guy and he doesn't look as good as he is because of the guard play. But a guard that they have the ball so much, a good guard, he looks good all the time. A big guy, this guy last night that I'm thinking he's going to be the number one in the draft, Mobley.
Yeah.
Whoever don't pick Mobley, they're going to be in 2 or 3 years. They're going to be very sorry if they didn't, But sometimes you might get in trouble being a big guy, if your team is not doing that well, trying to do too much, since they're not most of the time, they're not the great ball handlers on the team. You have a little good guard that can dribble. He looks good a lot of times, but the big guy, if he doesn't get the ball in his sweet spots in good positions, then he could look a little awkward out there.
That's very true.
Well, Butch, let's jump from your time to these games, and I want to get you. I know you've been concentrating on the MAC the MAC conference more than maybe the national stories, but give us your take on these two games Saturday and then the final. I mean, do you think Gonzaga is going to get stopped by any of these other three teams?
I've been looking at Gonzaga. I've been hearing about them all year, and I just started seeing them doing the NCAA tournament, and they definitely have one of the best teams I've ever seen. They have like top players at every position, and you don't usually see that. I remember when I was playing, we had teams like North Carolina ourselves, Nevada, Las Vegas, Louisville, where you had starting teams that all five players got drafted into the NBA.
Indiana, geez, right?
In Indiana, we seen teams like that, and that's how I see Gonzaga. That all the players make good plays. You see some teams that they have three players that make solid plays, and you might see one guy, he might not make that good of a play. But with Gonzaga, you have five guys on the court, and everybody seems to do the right thing. So I look at them as the favorite. And then you have UCLA, Houston. Who's the other team with Houston?
Baylor.
Baylor. And they all have strong teams, and I've seen some weaknesses at different times in some of their players. But Gonzaga, I'm still looking for the weakness.
The 1976 regional final, when it was Indiana against Marquette, to Butch's point, all 10 starters, there's a famous photo of all 10 starters played in the NBA. I mean, how often do you see that in a college basketball game? All 10 starters, all five from Marquette and all five from Indiana played in the NBA. And Butch, one quick question. I've always wondered if you framed and saved that Sports Illustrated cover where you're hugging Magic Johnson when the Lakers won it. I guess it probably was 1980 when you were on the Lakers and you guys won the national or the NBA title. Did you ever save that SI cover?
I don't believe you asked that question. Of course I did. That's the photo that everybody asks about. They ask about the Olympics in '76, and they ask about that photo with Magic Johnson hug. Yeah,
you're lifting them up. That's how strong you were.
Well, you guys were the same height, weren't you, Butch?
Yeah. If you stop counting at 6 feet, 6 feet.
You bring up a good point with that Indiana regional final loss in '76, because obviously that was the last team that won the championship undefeated. Was that Indiana team that you lost to in the regional final? How do you feel they stack up against these two teams? Would stack up against each other? That Indiana team and this today's Gonzaga team.
No, that would be. I would like to see that game. They had a great team. They had great size. Quinn Buckner was the point guard at 6'3", very strong football player, just like Suggs. And then you had Wilkerson, 6'6", Scott May, Abernathy, and Ken Benson. They had a professionally built team.
Yeah.
I don't watch that much football, but I guess that's what a lot of people say about Alabama. When you saw that Indiana team, they look like pros playing against college teams.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, let me do this because I see Larry Farmer has joined us. I'm going to bring Larry in. Again, Larry played 3 years for John Wooden and the great UCLA Bruin teams in the I guess early '70s. He played with Sidney Wicks. He played with Walton early in his career. And we'll get Larry in here now. 3-time, sorry, Butch, I know we got one for you, but 3-time national champion, Larry Farmer. Hi, Larry. How are you?
You're really breaking. I'm terrific. Okay.
Yeah, you're getting a little. This is our night for technical difficulties, Mac.
I see it happens, man. It happens.
It does. You're getting a little choppy on this, Larry.
Yeah, let me try this again.
Got to get you in here. Butch really wanted to talk to you. He's going to come back. So
There you go. There you go.
sometimes you got to just get out and get in. You know, this is the problem with live stuff, man. We had a guy want to get on Northeast Streaming Sports. He didn't want to come on because he didn't want to do live stuff because stuff went wrong. But isn't this fun? I mean, geez.
Yeah, you can't beat it. It's entertaining just this alone. Just going back to the point of Gonzaga here with the best team in the conference right now and left in the tournament, and I agree with that. But the great thing about the March Madness is you have an off shooting day. Somebody isn't hitting their shots, somebody isn't rebounding enough, they can lose, and that's the ultimate thing about March Madness, right? Because there's no 2 out of 3. So you got one night, and you messed up that one night, and I don't care who you are, you're going down. So, I give Houston a shot, man. I mean, Baylor and of course Gonzaga, the favorites, UCLA being a Cinderella. But man, I like Houston a lot. And if one of those teams have an off night and as aggressive and as tough as Houston is, they got a good shot. They got a good shot.
Let's try to get Larry Farmer back in here. Any better, Larry?
Keith, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Definitely
I can hear you. Can you hear us, Larry?
I can hear you, but it's real choppy.
Okay, well, as long as you can hear us, we'll try to bear with it. So I'm joined here by my co-host Mac McGrath from Mac and Jack Sports, and Big Shaw from the Big Shaw Sports Podcast, and also a player who's not quite your contemporary, came along a few years later, Butch Lee from Marquette, who wanted to certainly say hello to you tonight.
How you doing, Larry? I never met you, but I seen you play some big time basketball. I grew up watching you guys, and I had to stay on here so at least I could say hello to you for the first time.
And I've also got sports writer Tom Keegan with us too, who I'm sure has covered your school, if not Larry Farmer, for sure. So, Larry, I appreciate you joining us tonight. Again, as I said in your introduction, Butch is a great player, played on some great Marquette teams, but you get the championship belt tonight for 3 consecutive NCAA championships. Yeah, I left him speechless.
Yeah, I'm getting really bad. I can barely hear you, Keith. I'm going to try to do this once more. I'll try it on another device. I apologize. No
worries. Give it another go. We're gonna have Mac into a 12-pack before long. Let me take him out of here. So
there you go. Let him give it another shot.
Yeah. So where were we? What can we do to let's see. So Butch, Houston.
Well, talking about the tournament right now, Al McGuire would always say that the Final Four was the biggest event in sports, and he would mention that just like a lot of other things he would say, and I kind of see that now. Just watching the young guys out there and how they perform. There's no tomorrow. And I told some of my friends, this is the only sport that you see that both teams are crying. The ones that win and the ones that lose are crying.
Yeah.
So you can't get any better than that. I'm happy for all the guys participating. And for sure, Gonzaga has been the favorite all year, but by no means, you got to go out there and win the game. I remember when my senior year, we were the defending champs, and we got knocked out in the first round. So I know clearly how things can happen and how things can change at the drop of a hat in this tournament.
Miami of Ohio, right?
Yeah, the former Ohio State coach Randy Ayers was the star of that Miami of Ohio team. We were all in the dorm ready to run to Lake Michigan, and after the stunning upset, we just kind of hung around and listened to music all day and did what college kids do to soothe the pain.
Butch, let me ask you this question.
Keith, I'm gonna have to get out of here now, but good talking with you guys, and tell Larry if you get him, it was good seeing him at least. And you have a great show, and I had a great time.
Say hi.
A little bit.
Say hi to him again real quick. I think he's got a better feed right now.
Yeah, I got a much better feed. I had to switch it, go to my phone. I had to go to Plan B.
Yeah, Butch is always on his phone. So,
hey, Larry, I only won one championship, and I wanted to say hi to you before I left. But you won 3, so I'm gonna let you take it from here. And good luck to you guys. Have a good night, everyone.
Yeah, with that.
Butch, thanks for coming, Butch.
Thank you, guys.
All right,
Thanks, Butch.
So interesting enough, Butch. Last time he was on my show, he was his wife was in a hyperbaric chamber, and Butch was doing the show sitting next to her. So,
oh wow,
we had a little hum going on from the hyperbaric chamber. So, Larry, welcome again. I'll say one more time, awesome to have you with us. 3-time national champion with UCLA, with the great John Wooden in the middle of a 9-season run of national championships, if I'm not mistaken, right?
yeah, we'd won. We won 7 in a row during the time that I got there, and then played. So he was Coach Wooden had kind of figured things out, and he was operating on all cylinders.
Sure was. Tell me, I mean, the tournament was so much different then because, I mean, only one school per conference was getting in. I mean, it might have even only been 16 teams, maybe in 70. It might have expanded a little bit by then, maybe to 24. I'm not sure. You'd probably know better than I. But is there any comparison to the tournament then? Not as far as, the champions, being what's the word I'm looking for? And not to disparage the champions from back then, obviously, but the tournament itself. I mean, is there any comparison to what the tournament's like today to what it was then?
Well, there are so many more teams that are participating now. We've watched the expansion of the tournament. To go from, I think, 36 to 45, and it went up incrementally. But the media coverage now. There's so many more people that follow the game. It's a lot different, but even back in those days, getting into the tournament and being able to compete for, a championship was a huge deal. There's just a lot more teams being able to compete for it now.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people that I've talked about over the years, and it's funny. Whether they're trying to disparage what UCLA did or some other great teams did back in the day, right? Well, they only had to win 2-3 games, whatever, to get to the championship game. And I'm like, yeah, but you had to play well all year just to get in the tournament. You didn't get in it at 18 and 14, right?
Right. Well, I remember my sophomore year at UCLA, we lost one game, and we lost that game to USC. That was my freshman year. We lost to USC, and we split with them. They had the great Paul Westphal, and USC wound up finishing second in the Pac-8. They were ranked all year long, and they were ranked in the top 10 in the nation. And because they finished second in the Pac-8, they did not get to participate in the NCAA tournament.
Wow.
Great example.
That's crazy. Larry,
great example. Go ahead, Tom.
I remember the starting guards were Greg Lee and Henry Bibby, and then you and Jamal Wilkes at forward, and Bill Walton at center. Just an unbelievable team. But Walton used to say the best center he faced all year was the center he faced in practice, Sven Nader.
Yes.
How good was Nader? I mean, was Walton exaggerating, or how good was he?
No, he really wasn't exaggerating. That year, Swen's senior year was a year ahead of Bill. Swen was a first-round draft choice and made our Olympic team. He was a prototypical European-type player, 6'11", 250 pounds, and he was actually a pick-and-pop center. He was a very good jump shooter in those days, but he was physical. He was quick. He had good feet. He was agile, and he would give Bill fits in practice. And Bill would kind of work him over in the post, But then Swin, we get down to that other end, and Swin can kind of step out on the floor, and he could shoot that little jump shot and get real physical with Bill. Well, Coach Wooden wouldn't let him get too physical with Bill, but he was the second best center that Bill. He was the best center that Bill would face all year long.
That's wild. I talked to Greg Lee once about your teams, and he said that Walton had this big hand, and he would stick his hand out, and he didn't have to say a word. That meant, pass me the ball. And he passed them the ball.
Bill would tell us sometimes, he says, I'm not real hungry to score. So, I'll get the defensive rebound. And he'd tell me and Jamal, he said, you guys box out your men. And once I get the rebound, you guys fill the lane, and, we'll just run fast breaks all night. And that would pretty much happen at the beginning of the game. He'd rebound, get those defensive rebounds. He'd outlet that ball, and we were off to the races. Every now and then when Bill thought, okay, it's my turn to, crank up about 3 or 4 shots, he'd get that offensive rebound. And, he was our defensive rebound. And, he was known for throwing that great outlet pass. And Bill would get the ball, and he'd motion for those guards to come back. And he'd come back to Bill, and he'd hand him the ball. Then he'd sprint down the court, get in that low post.
He had one of the great NCAA final games against Memphis State. What did he go 21 of 22, I think, from the field, and
yeah,
that was after you had graduated. I think that
no, I was a senior that year.
Oh, you were a senior that year, yeah.
And that was Bill's junior year, and I think one of the most unique things about that game is Bill went 21 for 22 from the floor. And I've told people this over the years. I think the one shot that he missed it in close, and he got his own offensive rebound, and he scored anyway.
Wow.
He never had an empty trip where he got the ball and he shot. He just missed one, but he wound up scoring on that possession anyway.
One of the great individual performances ever. Larry, what about this year's team? I mean, have you followed this UCLA team closely this year?
Not as close as probably I should have, especially with the way things have turned out since.
Congratulations, by the way. I mean, this team barely got in the tournament. Probably one of the last 4 teams in. Had to play in the first 4.
Yeah.
They've had a couple of. They got a break playing Abilene Christensen probably in the second round, but they beat the 2 and the 1 seeds after that. So they've had a tough road to get to here.
Yeah.
How surprised are you?
Well, I guess I'm as surprised as anybody. UCLA started off this year, and they started off playing very well, and through a number of things. And you never know, which is probably one of the reasons why I didn't follow them or college basketball as closely as I ordinarily do. With the coronavirus and teams shutting down and these teams not playing and schedules getting changed and altered, it just wasn't the same early on. And
sure.
So they started off well. Then I guess they hit kind of a rocky road there for a while, and then when they actually finished up the season, on a 4-game losing, and then the conference itself wasn't getting a lot of praise, other than Bill Walton. Nobody was really thinking highly of the teams in the Pac-12, and UCLA and then all the other Pac-12 teams that made it into the tournament. I think really dispelled a lot of the rumors that the Pac-12 wasn't very good this year because they proved to be very competitive. But just watching this year's UCLA team, the thing that I've been the most impressed by is their defense. That game yesterday, they took away that high pick and roll. They shut down the 3-point shot, and you win a game where you only score 51 points. You better be playing some defense, and that's what they did.
Yeah, so you had the perspective, unique perspective, at least from our other guest today. Well, no, Rex Walters was a coach as well, but you coached at UCLA. You coach at Loyola Chicago, actually, as well. I mean, watching these teams play, is UCLA going to be able to do that, to do the same thing that they did against Michigan to this tremendous, it seems, Gonzaga team that they're going to play in the semifinal?
that's the beauty of the NCAA tournament. You know, you only play one game. You know, one game at a time. Not the best of three. It's not the 7 series, and so the best team doesn't always win if they're not playing their best. You know, during that one game, and you know, Gonzaga is obviously going to be a huge test for UCLA. But if UCLA can defend and execute offensively and find some other people to contribute offensively where we can score points, because it's going to take more than 50 points to beat Gonzaga.
Yeah.
But if they can guard and just not get blown out, you know, because of fast break and transition and offensive rebounds, you know, they've got a chance. And they've proven that with the way they played, you know, these first 4 games.
Yeah. My big concern would be whether they can put the ball on the hoop enough, but
yeah, that
right.
is right there. And you think about, look at what Alabama and Michigan back to back. You know, those teams were really touted as offensive juggernauts, and UCLA defended them, and neither one of those teams shot well. And you know, you can look at a variety of reasons why didn't they shoot well. Well, you know, maybe it had something to do with UCLA.
How about the other matchup, Houston and Baylor? How do you see that? We see it kind of. I know Shaw's a big Baylor fan, and it looks like Mac is on the side of Houston. We'll get Tom's opinion here in a second as well. How do you see that game? I see it as a shootout. That's just going to be a up and down the floor kind of game. But
you know, I don't know enough. I haven't seen enough of either one of those teams to really formulate an opinion. I know what all of the experts were saying at the beginning of the year, that, you know, it was going to be Baylor and Gonzaga. I knew they were actually supposed to play one another early, but then again, because of the virus, the game got canceled. And so I just think from a pure fan standpoint, and I don't mean to disparage anybody else, certainly I don't mean to disparage UCLA. It just seems like the more popular contest would be Baylor and Gonzaga. So I would probably, on the other side, say Baylor probably has a little bit of an edge.
Was Coach Sampson coaching when you were still active coaching in the league or not?
Coach Sampson's been around for a long, long time.
I know, yeah, late 80s.
Done well wherever he's been, but yeah, he's been around. Always been known for being a tough-minded defensive coach. This Houston team, apparently, they do that.
You didn't ever have an opportunity to match up against Coach Sampson?
I did not.
I thought you might have in one of your stops later in your career, because he had been around. I hadn't realized he'd been around since the mid 80s, for crying out loud. He's been around a long, long time.
You say that mid 80s like that's a long time, and I go.
I know.
You got to be careful with that.
I know. I'm getting older. I got to be careful, Larry. I think we talked about this before.
Hey, Keith, I got a question for Larry. Larry, I mean, I love the coaching player aspect. I coached for years, and you had a legendary coach that you played for, probably the most legendary coach in basketball history. Some will even say in sports history with John Gooden. I mean, you know, we listen to a lot of players that played for legendary coaches in all sports, like Lombardi's players will rave about Lombardi, and you know, and all these other coaches that did such a masterful job with their programs. What was it like to play for John Gooden, and what kind of things did you get from John Gooden, not just on the court, Larry?
Yeah, you know, Coach Wooden was, you know, when you talk about him, the first thing that comes to my mind, and you know, again, this is just right off the top, is Coach Wooden led by example. You know, and I'll just give you a couple of examples. He was very strict on everybody always being on time. I mean, if you're on time, you're 5 minutes late. And so if practice was 3 o'clock, you know, I would always get out there early, as would most of the players. But Coach Wooden was always out there 15 minutes, half an hour early, just in case you wanted to come out, get up some extra shots, talk to him. And so you weren't going to go out there and outwork him. He planned his 2.5 hour practice. It took him 2 hours every day to plan practice. He was that meticulous. And so every minute of practice was timed, measured every drill. And so he expected you to come prepared to practice and give 100%, but he'd already given 100% in preparing the practice. You know, he was a firm believer in fundamentals. We did that every day. We worked on keeping the game simple. We worked on, if you're fundamentally sound, you make less mistakes than your opponent. We were in great shape, and he demanded that we play as a team. And if you had come to one of our practices, you would have been bored to tears, because if you had stayed at UCLA for a week and watched us practice, you would have seen us do the same drills every day, over and over and over again. But it was those drills and the precision in which we ran them, and then the attention to detail in making mistakes and not making those mistakes, and being fundamentally sound, how we passed the ball, how we caught the ball, how we jump stopped. We were literally kind of a machine. And when you get really good players that you can put in a system and they all accept their roles, they understand their role, you know, you can kind of get this thing to where you're going to be hard to beat. And playing for Coach Wooden was like that. And he set a great example for us. He made the game simple. He made us accountable to each other, and he made us play as a team. And I agree with you. I mean, people say he's the best basketball coach of all time. And looking back at it and being slightly prejudiced, in my opinion, the greatest coaches of all time in any sport.
Yeah, it's certainly a topic of debate, and he would be at the top of that debate for sure. Listen, Larry, I appreciate you coming on. You can certainly stay. I don't want to leave Gene Smith waiting in the room too long.
No, you guys go ahead. I'd like to do this again, Keith. You know, I enjoy doing this.
I love having you on. You're one of my favorite. I've had some of my favorite guests on this show tonight, so I'm happy you could stay. You're welcome to stay and chat a little bit further. I'm not trying to rush you out at any stretch of the imagination. So if you have to run, great. I appreciate you having on, but you can feel free to stay.
Thanks, Keith.
All right, thanks, Larry.
Bye-bye, Keith.
You leaving, Tom?
Yeah.
Thanks for coming, Tom. Bye-bye.
Take care, Keith. Nice seeing you.
Okay, you're not going anywhere, Mac.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was out too.
Our next guest tonight is one of my favorite guests as well on my show, TGI Sports Talk. He's the host of Hoya Locker Room. He's a former NCAA champion. I've been saying that a lot tonight. 1984 Georgetown Hoyas, Gene Smith. Thank you, Gene, for coming in tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'm doing daddy duty, so apologies for the setup. But, you know, I've seen worse. I've seen much better.
We've had it all tonight. Don't worry, Gene. We've had it all.
But to your earlier point, the guests that you've had on, I'm just a water boy anyway. So I'm happy to be here, man. I'm happy to be here.
Gene has been my guest who has been the most self-deprecating of all my guests I've had, and it's endearing. But he sells himself too short.
Well, see, you can't say that without me having a comeback. Look, there's a time and a place. There was a quote that was said to me yesterday, and I'm gonna mess it up, but it just said, "I learned a long time ago, humility has a time and place." Amen.
Amen to that, Gene.
That's all I'm saying, man. I'm not. Listen, I love everything over here.
Excellent point.
Time and the place for everything.
It's Gene. It's easy to talk. It's harder to walk the walk. And if you can do both, more power to you. If you know what I mean.
Yes, sir.
I want to introduce you to John McGrath, the co-host of Mac and Jack Show on the Northeastern Sports, and Big Shaw from the Big Shaw Sports podcast. I'm finally trying to get somebody closer to Shaw's. I
love that.
Shaw's demographic. I've had a lot of guys that Shaw's kind of been like, these guys are like, I don't know who these guys are because I'm too young. But Larry's at least a little closer, I think, Shaw. You're on mute, buddy. Hold on, you're on mute.
Oh, I'm on mute.
Say it again.
Oh, I was like, man, he said 84. I was born in 86. So.
Oh, we're getting closer. We're getting closer.
Put him back on mute. Put him back on mute.
That's
Oh
great.
man.
Oh, gosh.
Oh man.
So it's funny because Gene was just on my show recently, and I'm getting some feedback somewhere, but Gene was just on my show recently, and we talked a lot about that 1984 championship game. We talked a lot about the 82 Final Four. Gene played in 2 Final Fours, and Gene, I'll leave it to you, but give me, and I'll let you say in your own words, you won in 84, you lost in the final in 82. How did those 2 teams compare?
Oh, it's night and day almost, but it's not the stuff that shows up in the box score. So 82 was senior laden. So we had 6 seniors, and it was just, and I was a sophomore, and just everybody had a role. You knew where you had to be. If you weren't there, somebody told you. I mean, so that team for me is by far the best team that's ever been in the blue and gray, and I'm biased. 84 was just a culmination. Like, you put in those blocks, and 84 was like, okay, 80 they kicked in the door the inaugural year of the Big East.
Yep.
So they're already tapping, right? Got to the Elite 8, and then it was a kind of a watershed. So you 82, 84, 85. If he wins another one, I think we would have given my beloved coach, who just recently passed away, more flowers while he was here.
Yeah.
So don't get me on my soapbox about that.
No, we won't do that. It's funny, Mac, it goes to your point. We've talked a lot about it tonight and on other shows that, back, and you talked about building blocks, Gene. And one of the differences in the games today is that the teams that still build that way, which tend to be the mid-majors more than the power conferences, they're the ones that are being successful in these tournaments as much or more so in some cases than the guys who are getting the one-and-done kids. So, Mac, you want to elaborate at all on your point with Gene?
Yeah, Gene. I just think that, I'm not against anybody going and making some money. And if you're talented enough, and even if you don't go to college, you come out of high school and you want to play professional. But what happens to a lot of players and a lot of teams is they're facilitating like a stopover where some of these young players come in. They're told by agents or by other people that they're really great. They end up in the NBA. They don't do too well, most of them. Some of them make it, and it destroys the the college basketball season and the teams itself. Where at one time, of course, you had the Kentuckys, you had you had the Missouris and the Dukes, and now it looks like that the teams with the players that are staying there 3 or 4 years are the ones with the best teams right now. And I really believe that either the NBA, in conjunction with the NCAA, should do something about this, because you're not just hurting the kids' futures in most cases, you're hurting the game of college basketball also. And it seems a shame to me that it's not back when you actually went to college in basketball and refined your skills and became a better player. Now it's like, you got a lot of talent, see you later. And that kind of bothers me a little bit, Gene.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with any of that. I just think the door has already been open. It's wide open now. Yeah. So, I don't get the NCAA. I didn't get them when I played, but I didn't know any better. As an old man now, I look at them. I don't know what they stand for. What's really collegiate about college basketball anymore? You look at what's going on in the NBA. It's a domino effect to what you see in college with this transfer portal. NBA had the most free agent movement, trades, transactions ever this past trading deadline. So it's where we are. I mean, and if you just look at society, it's a microcosm of that. So, it's hard for me to watch college basketball. I know this is a college basketball show, Rich, and you asked me to be on, and I said yes before I should have said no. But it's Georgetown's playing.
That's had a good day.
Georgetown playing them front and center, but to your point, though, Gonzaga, to me, of all the schools that are in there, they seem to have established what I like to see in college basketball, a culture.
Yeah.
Like a team actually has an identity. Gonzaga gonna have some badass white boys. They are. And they're gonna give you the business. And they're gonna have a light-skinned cat, and then they're gonna have a couple cats, a little tribal, got some stuff, but they come into play.
Mm-hmm.
And they recruiting from the Northwest heavy.
Yeah.
I like identity, and that's what I miss about that to me was the difference between college and pro.
Agree.
Like these programs, because of their head coaches, that's the only thing I had in common with a lot of your guests. Like a lot of these guys were NCAA champions and they actually played. There's a big difference, But
you played some big minutes. We talked about that.
My point is good coaches. Coaches stayed. Now coaches bounce around like crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Shaka Smart and Marquette, but it's going to take me a while to digest it. I was just getting used to him in Texas. Yeah. Before that, he was at what? George Mason?
VCU.
VCU. Yeah. VCU. I mean, so it's like, but everything, you just have to appreciate it for as best you can. Final Four is always special.
Yeah.
No matter what. And even in a pandemic, I think it's even that much more special.
Well, you talk about the coaches and the culture, Gene, and you got two teams in this Final Four, and Mark Few and Scott Drew, who have been at these schools for a long time. Scott Drew, 18 years, and Few's got to be, I don't know, close to 18 or 20, I guess, right? Yeah. And what you talked about, that culture, has been really a recurring theme throughout the show with all our guests talking about Gonzaga. Of all the teams that they've watched in this tournament, they've got that thing. Right.
You love to see it. Yeah. You love to see it, especially in college, because the NBA gets NBA, you don't really get it till, the finals, where you actually see, cats diving on the ball, really being up. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I watched, just in preparation for the show, I watched a little bit of that. Who played yesterday? I watched Gonzaga and then USC. So I watched a little bit of that yesterday. Hey, I enjoyed watching USC. They didn't give up.
No, they didn't.
They played hard.
Yeah, they got their butt whipped, but they didn't give up.
They got spanked. But they kept fighting though. They kept fighting. I give it to them.
The only thing that sometimes worries me about a team like Gonzaga getting to this point is they've really blown everybody out. They haven't had that moment where they've got to really come through in a clutch moment. They've really walked through the competition, and that's a testament to how good they are. But if they get into a game, I don't think it'll happen against UCLA. I really don't. I think they'll handle. I'm glad Larry's gone. Larry, if you're still listening, I'm sorry.
I don't know how long you've been on the air, Rich, but I don't talk that stuff when you get to the Final Four. Don't nobody know nothing. It gets magical. It gets tricky there. Like, you don't know nothing.
Another question for you, Gene.
Yeah.
The Big East, right? The Big East was a powerhouse for quite a while. UConn, Georgetown, Syracuse, Boston College, St. John's, Maryland, Rhode Island. I mean, they were the league. Breaking up the Big East, for them going to other conferences, the ACC or whatever, because of football programs, and this is why they did it. It kind of took a little bit away the rivalries they had there and the competition and maybe even recruiting, Gene. So what do you think about the Big East now?
I love that UConn went back, especially because my godson will be going into his junior year at UConn, Jalen Gaffney, Agent Zero. So I like seeing him in the Big East. Yeah. I think as long as you have Georgetown, like the founding members, Seton Hall, St. John's. I mean, Syracuse was a miss, but Georgetown plays them out of pocket, I think, now on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. I just think, I look at just you're going to get me going down a rabbit hole. See, it's always guys in the hat that you have to worry about. I just think the universities do such a poor job of history, legacy, pride, tradition. When Gavitt was there was just little things always being done. And Gavitt's son there, and this is no slight on anyone, but it's not intentional to keep that legacy intact. So the question you're asking is, man, we could do a whole 45 minutes on that. I'm talking every game in the Big East and the ABs was a war. There were I'm talking Jay Murphy from Boston College. Anybody remember Jay Murphy?
Sure.
Left-handed, 6'11". Yeah. 86. You got to stay on the side for a second. This is adults only conversation. Jay Murphy was a 6'11", had a jumper from 18 foot that was money.
Yeah.
Money. Yes, they put him at the top. He turned around, pop that thing. Pop. John Bagley. Rich and I talked about this. So the Big East was team by team. You had at least 4 or 5 guys. You had 2 guys that were nationally known, at least. And then you had 4 or 5 guys that were giving you the business. Now, when you got into the glory years, like 85, 86, 86, man, everybody was loaded.
Yep.
I mean, it was wars. I mean, you wanted to fight because it was that. But that was, game was different. But I don't think the university or the league does their part.
Right.
And again, if they want to make it about money, that's untapped revenue right there. They knew how to do it. Because I look at George, and again, I'm going down a rabbit hole. I'm going to stop right now. You take me down a rabbit hole. I'm not going to let you do it. That was a trick.
I'm the only guy without a hat on these.
So, I just think it's, I look at it for what it is in 2020. I love it. But, I can only hope that my coach, my brethren, is talking to those guys about what the Big East is all about and what they're part of that legacy. Georgetown just won the 8th Big East tournament championship. We back up top where we supposed to be. Won the first and won the last. Say something to me. Where y'all at, Big East? Say something to me. So it's that kind of pride that I think needs to be. But kids leave so fast now. It's difficult. It's difficult. Yeah,
it is. Well, that's why you and I talked about the fact that what's kept the Big East floating a little bit is Villanova, and they have kept that model a little bit. They don't go for the one and dones. He goes for that level below, and he gets those kids for a year and builds that culture that we talked about with.
Just want to stay out of the DMV. I want Jay to stay out of the DMV. So stay out of the DMV, Jay.
Right. We talked about that too. Stay at home, right?
Stay home.
Stay in Philly. Well,
So
let me ask you. Have you got a prediction for us on these games this weekend?
Moi?
You.
I am UCLA all the way. I have 2 very good friends that are Bruins. Ralph Jackson came out the same year as I did. And then Gerald Madkins. They're both UCLA Bruins. I've been blowing them up over the weekend. I'm more excited than they are. So, but West Coast guys can be that way. But yeah, I'm UCLA all the way. That's the only prediction I'm making. I don't even know who they're playing, but I'm UCLA all the way.
They're playing Gonzaga, just so you know.
I'm UCLA all the way. I'm happy to see Houston back in there because again, when we talk about that legacy thing, that's a beautiful thing. I mean, Houston has a rich tradition, and what I remember about Baylor is they always had nice uniforms.
Yes. Styling. Always styling.
Always styling.
Sure, you don't like the uniforms.
Yeah, Baylor gonna smoke Houston.
Baylor gonna smoke Houston. Okay.
No, it's not gonna happen, Big Shaw. Houston's gonna go up against Gonzaga and beat them in the finals, and you watch me.
Houston's the team that plays a good D, right? They're the defensive. Okay. I'm gonna check them out.
I'm a Syracuse guy too. Yeah.
I always struggle with brothers that are Syracuse fans.
I'm a Syracuse man too.
I mean, it's cold. Don't get me wrong.
Here he goes.
Biggie froze up.
You did. You got him wound up with the cold in Syracuse. Man.
I'm worried. I think you gave Gene a stroke or something.
Yeah,
Jeez.
I'm not okay. So I give you pearl.
I think,
Boy,
I think
you ended the show by killing off one of our guests.
Big Shaw. I want to know how you became a Syracuse fan.
Well, this is how I became a Syracuse fan. Actually, I went to a game up there, and the stadium was packed. I forgot who was playing.
You went to the Carry Dome. Went to the Carry Dome?
Yeah, it was big.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Okay, I got you only have to tell me the rest of the story. I got it.
I fell in love. Now, this is where I'm at, right? I'm being a Syracuse man.
Yeah, that's insane.
So ever since then, I've been a Syracuse fan. You know, they been like up and down, you know, but you know, they're gonna get it together sooner or later.
Oh, yeah, Syracuse. I mean, Boeheim will be 99 and still be playing that zone. That zone defense.
They will be. You're right.
You know, that zone though, they ran to that zone.
No zone at Georgetown.
It works. Yeah. I mean, but yeah, Syracuse will always be in the mix. It's hard seeing them in the ACC. You can't fake the funk. The optics are kind of whack, but you know.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll come back around. Maybe they'll come back to the Big East. You never know. I mean, yeah, you just never know. But yeah, Syracuse will always be in the mix. Always be in the mix.
Oh yeah.
So we got you down as a UCLA pick this weekend, Gene.
Everything.
Now, does the winner get like a TGI mug or a T-shirt?
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
You will, yes. If UCLA wins, I probably ought to send you more than just a mug. I ought to send you like a Mustang or something.
I'm just letting you know. I'm collecting, so don't think you gonna say something because I'm gonna run this tape. I'm coming from a Mustang. He said Mustang, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
No. But I said mustard.
Oh my!
All right, listen, we're gonna have to wrap it up. So, Gene, I thank you for coming on again. You're really a great guest. I loved having you.
Nice meeting you, Gene.
Don't be too hard on Big Shaw. It's not his fault when he was born. You know?
Pleasure being in the company. In the company. Thank you.
I appreciate it, Gene. Thank you.
We'll be all over Georgetown Hoya, the Hoya locker room. Excuse me.
Please check me out if you can. All right.
Absolutely. Thanks, Gene. Bye-bye. Gene's a character. We had a lot of fun. I think Gene, I don't know. Gene might have been worked up like you tonight, Mac. I don't know. He might have been had a little.
He's a very, very fun guest. That's for sure.
Gene is a lot of fun. We had a lot of talk. I'm surprised that he was as hard on Shaw as he was, but I realized I feel bad, and I now that once we started to get into it, I was like, Shaw. I'm watching Shaw with Butch Lee and Farmer, and he's like, who?
I loved it. I was like, man, you know, all this sports stuff's going right there. I was like, man, who are these dudes? I mean, I Googled, I was like, man, they brought my time. But
I'll tell you what,
conversation.
You Google any one of those guys we just talked about, and you're going to learn some really good stuff about college basketball back in the day.
Yeah, just hearing them talk, I was like, this is amazing stuff. So
stuff.
I really loved it.
So before we go, give me your picks one last time, Mac.
Well, I'm going with Coach Stampson in Houston with 15 NCAA tournaments, former assistant to the Houston Rockets to beat Baylor. And I want to go with UCLA so bad. I mean, that would be awesome. I can't. Gonzaga should beat them pretty easily. But guess what? I don't know if we're going to have an NCAA championship show. But guess what? Houston upsets everyone and is the national champion.
Wow, Shaw, I know you're not going there.
Man.
What do you got?
You said, who you say? You said Houston?
Houston's winning it
all of it.
Oh, no. Wow. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to say it. Gonzaga's going to win the whole thing. But if they play Baylor, it's going to be a scrap. It's going to be a feisty game because Gonzaga haven't played nobody. We know that. But you play a team like Baylor or Houston, you better be ready. So, but I'm going with Baylor. I'm going to stick with my guns. Baylor and Gonzaga is going to be Gonzaga because they have the experience. You know, they have the team. So I'm going with Gonzaga, man. They're going to sweep the floor with them.
All right, and I'll give you guys a very close Baylor over Houston pick. Very close. Gonzaga by Larry. I hope you stopped listening. 35 probably. They're going to kill UCLA, and Gonzaga will beat Baylor. And I agree with Shaw in a scrappy game, but I think they'll probably pull away and win by 10 or so by the end. There you go, Gonzaga. 2 Gonzagas, 1 Houston. We got to replay this tape.
Yes.
In about a week and a half.
Yes, sir.
Guys, I've had a lot of fun tonight, except for the little technical glitches we had, but it didn't go too bad. Sorry we didn't get the Chef Joe on, but we will get him on some future stuff. I promise I'll play him on my show. Mac, you can let him know that, and we'll play him on the draft show and whatnot. So
yeah, there's no problem. It happens. Live things happen, Keith. All you can do is the best you can.
They do. Guys, I appreciate you coming on with me tonight. We had a lot of fun for a couple hours. I'll see you guys down the road. Mac, I'll see you Friday morning.
Yes.
Keith Engel, Mac, and Big Shaw. We're out of here. Have a great night, guys.
All right, everybody.